She often says to me, why did you go out with me? And I said, I put an advert in the paper. Wanted, blonde, long hair, blue eyes. Dad must be an engine driver. Please send photo of engine.
She was a real people person, and wherever she went, she just liked to chat to people and get to know them. It's devastating to watch the person you love slip away bit by bit. It's a living grief.
And those last 3 or 4 months before she passed, it was real hell.
My family is just one of the many families across the UK that's dealt with the life-changing effects of dementia. Richard, who's my grandfather, felt the impact directly when his wife and my grandmother, Teresa, had the illness.
Well, 17 years old with me, mate. I'd moved out from London to a place called Great Chesterford, which is near Cambridge. And Teresa was born and brought up in Cambridge. And she was one of 7. And her father was an engine driver, which for me was a good boon. We had 2 other friends, who was a boy and a girl, or a lad and a lass called Ray and Sue, and they match made us. Ray came up to me and he said, you like Teresa, don't you? So I said, yes, I do. And he said, well, why don't you ask her out? She's not with anybody. I said, no. I said, you want to go out with me? Joking. You never know unless you ask. So I thought about it for a few minutes, for more than a few minutes. And in the end, I took the bull by the horns and walked across to where she was sitting on this stool with a couple of lasses. And I was so shy, I couldn't hear myself talk. It was like someone had put fingers in my ear holes. And then she sat there, and I went up to her and I said, well, I think I said I couldn't hear myself. I said, would you like to go to the pictures with me? And I was amazed because she said, oh, I love that. I thought, oh, hell, what do I do now?
Cooper.
I'm Chris. I am a priest in the Church of England, a vicar of a parish on the North Kent coast in Herne Bay, and Teresa was my mum. Well, Mum was always giving of herself, her time, and you never went home from her house empty-handed. She always found something that she'd put aside to give you, or she gave away stuff in the cupboard. She always put on big family dinners, and she loved cooking. That was her thing for the family. In fact, when I was little, she went to be a school cook as a part-time job, and she really enjoyed doing that in school and feeding all the different children and getting to know them. She was always smiling and laughing. That was the thing. She always loved to joke, and a great sense of humour.
You know, we both had the same silly warped sense of humour. We both played pranks on her like it was going out of business. But one thing I will say, whatever prank I played on her, she got back twofold. And I thought it was a good day, good joke, a good jolly one day to take a lunchbox, take all the sandwiches out of it and put some candles, 4 candles in it instead. And I put a note with have a light lunch. She never forgot it. Anyway, about 20 years down the road, I was at work one night on nights, and I'm sitting there having lunch, I'm dipping my biscuits in the tea, and I think, oh, this is a blooming hard. And the dog handler sat me, so I'm not surprised, Dick, you're eating Win-A-Lot. I went back home, you put Win-A-Lot in my thing? She said, yes. She said, get you back for my 4 candles. Well, God, it was about 18 years ago, you know. But, you know, and even, you know, we had lots of drinks and pranks and jokes and a lot of love. You know, a lot of love.
Before she had me as the eldest child, she was a draftswoman back in the 1970s, in the days of old-fashioned pens and paper. Obviously, after I was born and my brother and sister, things had moved on. And by the end of the 80s, 90s, it was all computerised, and so that job had disappeared. And then she went to work for an engineering firm that designed Polaris missiles, and she was always really proud of her story of signing the Secrets Act and doing the plans for Polaris missiles.
So she was quite a clever old cook. I mean, she did beautiful drawings. She did this drawing out of her head. It was in 2018, so it wasn't long before she started where she could no longer pick a pencil up. And just one afternoon, she picked the paper up and she said, now it's Venice. She has never been to Venice in her life, and she had no photograph, no drawing to refer to, and she totally drew that out of her head. And I think it's wonderful. You look at the details she's putting in, the foliage, the lamp, the flowering basket, the balcony. Just someone to just make that out of her head. It shows you what a gifted person she really was. And that is the last drawing she ever did.
Dementia impacts over 900,000 people across the UK, according to Alzheimer's Society. But of course, it impacts more than just those that have it. It impacts friends, family members, and their loved ones.
Yeah, that's a long process, and then with hindsight you look back and you see signs of things further back. It took a long time for the family to come to terms with the diagnoses and to fully understand the impact at the time. But from simply getting confused and forgetting things, and the repeating, say the stories were often a thing. She would repeat the same stories a lot.
Yeah, she was 58 when she was diagnosed with dementia. We started noticing little things like she would put the taters on to boil and then they'd boil dry. Things you sort of think that anyone perhaps getting on in years would do, but she was 58.
Yeah.
And then I think she was almost, well, people who have Alzheimer's very often, not everybody, very often, they go through a period of denial. Sometimes a couple of years denial. And that is tragic because that denial period makes the Alzheimer's develop further, where it could be held back. And if anyone watches, I say to them, if you've got a relation or a loved one that is showing signs of Alzheimer's or any form of dementia, seek help as soon as you can, because as the doctor said to Teresa, I can't give you back what you've lost, but I can slow down what you've still got. I've got to have to say, there's a little help out, there is some help out there for sufferers. I won't say it's a lot, because it isn't, but there is some help. But there's absolutely nothing out there for carers. Nothing. The only thing we had was we had a course, it was a 2-day course, run by the local dementia clinic. And it was called Living with Dementia. And when we went there, basically all they did was hand out lots and lots of leaflets saying what you could apply for and what you couldn't apply for and what have you. I mean, the thing is, you, as a carer, you don't know the storm that's on the horizon. You really, really don't. And it's very hard to cope with.
Basically, caring for herself was getting quite challenging, and things she take for granted. Just to seeing, she couldn't cook anymore. She said she loved cooking and feeding family, and then, the day that she couldn't operate the oven or remember what to do, quite hard. And basic tasks of making a cup of tea became a challenge. So the mum who always looked after us and invited everybody in and made tea and made sure you were fed, and that was quite hard to watch that slip away. She loved telling stories. As we journeyed with her as she became ill, she would certainly go back over the old stories, but we missed them when they stopped being told.
Now, Cambridge isn't just home to Teresa and her family, but also home to the University of Cambridge, and it's where dementia expert James B. Rowe has explained the science behind the illness.
Yeah, so I'm James Rowe. I'm a neurologist. I'm a professor of cognitive neurology, which effectively means dementia. So I look at what causes dementia, how dementias affect humans and people, how we can diagnose it better and treat it better.
Explain to me how dementia impacts the body, the mind, and all the science behind it.
Yes, well, I suppose the first thing to say is dementia is a catch-all term that covers a family of different illnesses. So you've got different types of dementia. Alzheimer's disease is the commonest one that many people have heard of, and they're all essentially brain diseases. So they're none of them normal aging. They get more common as we get older, but they're not healthy aging. They are diseases. And all of the dementias really have some particular details in common, that they come with the build-up of some harmful junk proteins in the brain. But if something starts to go wrong, often in mid or early later life, that these junk proteins change their shape, they get a bit sticky, they change their form, and they start to clump together and disrupt the brain cells. And at the moment, none of them are curable, although they are all treatable with more or less efficacy, and that's, I think, a really important distinction between cure and treatment, and from treatment and care. So I think that there's an awful lot that can be done. First of all, I suppose I start with getting the right diagnosis. So if you are worried about yourself or on behalf of your parent or a husband or wife, first thing is to give somebody the confidence to come forward and ask for a diagnosis. Now, people may be worried, they might be frightened. That comes often back to the idea of stigma around dementia. So people may hold back from coming forward to get a diagnosis. And what you can do to support someone is to say, no, let's go and look into it. It might be it's not dementia, but if it is, let's face it together, let's get it sorted.
But you know, she went in that care home, and I still went to I visited 2.5 years in the care home, and I visited her for 5-6 hours every day, and I didn't miss one single day. So she was still. She said something very profound to me, because again her speech was going. It went completely in the end. But she said something very profound to me when in that home. She said to me, Dick, she said, our lives are going to follow two very different paths. Two paths that neither of us want to go down. That was really the last, most sensible thing she ever said to me. And that was 2 years before she died.
There were a series of cliffs would come along and suddenly something would happen and would drop. But with dementia, there's kind of, unlike another illness or physical illness where you can kind of perhaps regain something or rebuild and build back up again, with each of these cliffs you just dropped and lost something else and it was unrecoverable. And I can see the effect it's having on my dad, that he'd done all he could and the level of constant 24-hour care was just too much. He was physically exhausted, making himself ill. So it started as a sort of respite care from hospital after being in there for some time. And it was clear this was a care level that was needed, and that was assessed as such by the professionals, that this was a level of care, was full-time in a care home.
You married a summer for 50 years. We were married for 50 years. 51 years we were married, actually. But, you know, all of a sudden I was 68 and so was Triggs, and there you was. She was at a care home and I was on my own. Completely on my own. And she'd started to forget who I was. She'd started to forget who her family was. And the other thing was, I could go upstairs to bed and go to sleep all right, it's not a problem. But it was actually physically going up the stairs. It was just such an empty void at the top of the stairs. I just didn't want to go up there. And then I always remember I had a little bit of a watershed one night. I came home, it was a Sunday night, I was really tired. And I thought I'd go to bed about 9:30, I'm really tired. Well, I put the YouTube on, didn't I? Watched that bit, just watch another one, no, now it's now 11:10. So I thought, well, I'll go up. I got up and I thought, no, there's a basket full of iron to do there, I'll get that done next. So now, it's now midnight and I'm sitting there ironing, or standing there ironing. And I thought to myself, what are you doing, Dick? You don't need to be doing this, you can be doing this any time. You're just making an excuse not to go up those stairs.
We're still laughing even to the end, smiling. But it's hard as somebody in their 40s to see their mum slip away. You kind of think you have more time. Yeah, kind of feel cheated a little bit, to be fair, that more time to spend to see her grow old and enjoy her retirement. The person you always phoned up to ask questions for wasn't there anymore. You know, you run stuff through and run through on the phone. She always wanted to chat for ages on the phone. I lived further away, and it was hard losing that. And then towards the end, you'd kind of go visit, and that was harder because you want to tell her stuff, but you know she wasn't really taking it in. But still, you share and hope that something would come across. As towards the final stages of life, really, the body shutting down to the point where she couldn't sit in a chair. So seeing her bedbound was really hard because her world became small. And I remember sitting with my sister as we knew Mum was coming to the end of her life, and we took a break to go sit outside for a minute, and it was this awful feeling of kind of want to take her out into the world, take her for a trip to the seaside that she loved. It felt very sad that suddenly her world was her bedroom, and that was the end that she'd see.
And then after that, mate, she just very well went downhill. Very, very ill to the end, very ill. When I came out of a room of a night time, I used to call it my walk of hell. And those last 3 or 4 months before she passed, it was real hell. For her especially. I'd get in the lift to go downstairs, and sometimes I just to rest my head against the wall of the metal wall of the lift, and I'd say, just put an end to this because this is dreadful. Yeah. People will say to me, you lost your wife a year ago. It's not quite a year ago, it was May last year. And yes, that is quite true, but I didn't. I actually lost her 6 years ago. She stopped doing 6 years ago. She, through no fault of her own, please don't ever think this is a criticism, because it's not, but through no fault of her own, because of her illness, she wasn't a wife. She became, I don't know the right word to find here, she was the love of my life, well, still is, but she can no longer be a husband and wife as a husband and wife would normally be.
I mean, the milestones are always hard, the markers of the year, and this has been the first year, so it was the first. So, you know, we had the birthday was shortly after she died, even before the funeral, so that was, you know, the first of those, I suppose. Christmas was particularly hard, and Mother's Day was not that long ago, and it's just those reminders that she isn't here. And I mean, in some ways, there was a relief in not to see her suffering anymore particularly, but the dementia kind of took over and defined who she was.
My son Chris, yeah, I mean, he's now the vicar of Herne and Greenhill, and obviously yourself and his family. It has been an absolute boon having him here. It really, really has. It would have been a very lonely place without him. Yeah. And he looks after us very well. He watches out for us.
And it still doesn't seem quite real that she isn't here. You could kind of just want one more day, one more, just pop in and go and chat with her even in the care home one more day. But it'd be nice to see, you know, have her going for a chat and a walk and learning to live with her not here.
A few weeks after the funeral and that, when things had settled down a bit, and I sat out in my breath and I looked out the window and I thought, you know, today is the start of a new normal, and I haven't got the foggiest idea what that normal is. And that was the weirdest place to be. It really was. But I'll tell you now, it might sound a little bit theological, this, you know, I'm not a particularly religious person, but I go to where Teresa's buried. I keep her tidy, I keep it always has fresh flowers, la la. I know she's not in there. I know for a fact she's somewhere else. And I tell you now, mate, yeah, I've had a visit, a couple of them, two of them actually, and I know she's gone somewhere where she's okay. And I'm at ease with that.